some people think that co-sell is that point in time engagement where you sit down and you look at the list,
yes,
right?
Yeah, like let's compare spreadsheets.
And then off you go. Relationship co-sell is actually, you start that pre-work beforehand.
That's right.
And beyond that meeting, you're still connected.
Microsoft's purpose is in service of your purpose.
And again, 2024 is the year that partners come out as the leading edge of the spear on finding this buyer intent.
You show up to every meeting and demonstrate why you are relevant.
Every day I have to force myself to make sure that I'm taking one step ahead in terms of my own learning.
That flywheel of success is where you will build momentum, and that momentum will continue, and then you feed into the other systems to say, this is what we did. This is how we did it together.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Guide to Partnering. I'm Vince Menzione, your host, and I'm on a mission to empower every individual, organization, and partner to achieve their greatest results through successful partnering. Much of the discussion that we've been having is on the tectonic shifts, this decade of the ecosystem, the increasing dominance of the three hyperscalers, the changing buying behavior, and the importance of the mid-market, what Microsoft calls SMC, small, medium, and corporate, and this marketplace moment. I'm excited to be joined in the studio today here in Boca Raton with a leader responsible for many of Microsoft's largest partners and is also driving the partner engagement in this mid-market that is so important to the future growth and success of partners working with Microsoft. Oguo Atuanya is our latest guest, a GM at Microsoft, and a leader that I've gotten to know and has been on the podcast before. Oguo, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for having me again. Absolutely a pleasure to be back here.
It is I'm so excited to have you finally in the studio.
Looks great. I love it.
Well, you got to be in the room when we just had our big event yesterday. We recorded yesterday, our big event.
Fantastic.
And I'm glad you could stick around today, spend a little bit more time with us.
Thank you. You have
an important role. We got to know each other, in fact, because I was working with an organization that was trying to figure out how to work with the partner ecosystem that you manage. But for our listeners, I want you to maybe double down on that introduction that I just gave. Maybe explain your role in a little bit more detail and the mission of your organization.
Yeah, it's a very interesting and fulfilling role, I think. So I am responsible for a set of wonderful partner development managers in the Americas that look after those large partners that you talked about, as well as an organization, a channel sales organization that's responsible for co-sell.
Yes.
Right. So
such an important process.
The interlock of those two roles we found have been pretty impactful in helping, our partners stay ahead of the technological trends. Specifically this year, of course, we're focused on helping our partners get ahead when it comes to AI and security. Yep. And you mentioned earlier the growth of that small, medium corporate segment.
And you've been at Microsoft quite some time. I mean, you're a pretty young guy. So
I started in grade school.
You must have started very young. Tell us more about this career journey. You've had a fascinating career journey to this level at Microsoft. It's a pretty big role at Microsoft. So tell us a little bit more about Oguo.
It's been a wonderful ride. I've been at Microsoft for 22 years.
Wow.
Mostly all on the partner side. I started my career at Microsoft as what used to be a global account manager, but it's now a PDM. I ran one of our partners, largest partner in the embedded space, now IoT, Avnet.
Oh, yes.
We had some fun. We actually worked together to unseat Linux and Wind River as the lead operating systems and embedded, replacing them with Windows embedded and CE.
I remember those days.
Yeah, fun days. So I did that for a while and moved over to the classic OEM side where I was a BDM for some of our system builders. Went back to the embedded group, ran the Americas direct team. And then Steve Guggenheimer tapped me to run the Windows Mobile open channel distribution strategy. We had such a huge traction and progress with phones that were locked to operators. But on the other side of the equation, there was nothing going on with those open channel phones that were really, really big in places like Asia and Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I went to run that, did that for a bit, went over to the SMSMP side, you remember?
Yes, I do.
Worldwide distribution strategy. Eventually ran their distribution team out of Redmond. And then I spent about 4.5 years in Europe, living in the UK, running a devices business and IoT business.
Nice. So fascinating journey to this point.
It's been awesome. It's been fulfilling. Had a lot of, I'd say that one of my most fulfilling aspects of my career has just been to have the opportunity to mentor a group of people across the world. Yeah. I've got about, at any given time, 10 to 15 leaders that I'm mentoring across the globe. So
wow, how do you find time to do that? That is fascinating.
It's just a passion. I love watching people grow. I love watching people grow from different perspectives. Just having that ability to work with people from different walks of life, different parts of the globe. It's just been enriching.
I love that. Tell me about, like, you have a group of 15 people you're mentoring, or mostly younger folks, or like what is the typical profile of somebody that you mentor, and how does that engagement start?
They're actually quite dispersed, along the plains. I mean, I've got people who are about 3-4 years into Microsoft.
So earlier in career. I've got people who are about 10 years. Yeah. Microsoft, some ICs, some managers. So midpoint, and I've got a couple of very senior folks, and they've come to me from a compilation of or confluence of touch points. Yeah. Some introductions from people. Some of them actually know people who work in my organization, and they reach out to those people and say, "Hey, this kind of leader I like to speak to and grow from." And those introductions are made, and then try to just find time. Yeah. It strikes me, and I got to know you and some of the people who work for you, that your people are very important to you.
Absolutely. That's number one for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Where does that passion come from?
I come from a very close family, a very close-knit family. And I really watched my parents kind of do the same thing in their careers. My parents always told me that the number one asset you have as a human being are human beings. Everything else comes along for the ride. You nurture that, and everything falls in place. And we were always taught to, make time no matter what.
Yeah, I love
Find
that.
time.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's sort of persisted.
Well, as you know, we at our event we talked about mental health awareness.
Yep.
And younger people today, the rate of suicide, and I'm bringing this up not because I think that this is something that's lacking in our society today, is having someone to speak to. And I do think that we're investing, making contributions in organizations to support that. And I was just wondering what your point of view on that was, since you are mentoring some earlier people.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
If you think about the things that our young folks have to face today that we didn't have to deal with, the litany of social media out there, the material that's put out, just the gravity of some negative gravity of some of the things you see,
or the aspiration to something that's so hollow in terms of maybe
it's so superficial and hollow.
So superficial,
and then people just get caught up trying to be what they're not. So any opportunity that I have to sort of sit these young individuals down and just ground them and sort of give them a dose of reality. And also let them know that you're never really alone in this journey. It makes a difference. Because you never know where an individual is at a certain point of their lives and the impact it can have in terms of turning them one way or the other, vis-a-vis whatever they're facing at that point.
Is there a common piece of advice or guidance that you provide them, or is it situational across each of the?
It is mostly situational.
Yeah.
But I think young people just have to understand that your journey is your journey.
Yeah.
You're not gonna live someone else's life.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't compare yourself.
It may be wonderful for someone else. You're
Yeah.
not LeBron James. And believe me, he's got his own problems too that he has to deal with.
That's right.
And no matter what you're going through, someone else always has it worse.
That's right.
And then the last thing I tell people, even I speak to folks within my organization about this, is if everybody's health is intact, then you don't have a problem.
Yeah.
You have issues that you get to deal with and overcome. But once you have a problem with somebody's health, then things are really out of your control. So that's kind of the perspective.
This reminds me about you talked about having a tight-knit family. I came from a tight-knit family as well. And it seems that today we don't see as much of that as we used to. And it's a shame.
It's really, it's a detriment and a negative impact to the young folks.
Yeah.
But again, we as, leaders, we had this saying, I'm originally Nigerian, and we always had this saying about it taking a family.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me about when I was younger. And if I did something wrong, I never really got home before I was disciplined. I got disciplined along the way by neighbors. So in a sense, my parents didn't have to do much because
you had there was an accountability trail.
I already went through that.
I love it. I love it.
Checking those boxes.
And you were, if I recall, you were born in Nigeria and then you came to the United States as a teenager, or when did you come here?
So I was born in Nigeria. So we spent some time in Europe, and then also and then came to the US. Yeah. So luckily those values persist.
Yeah, that's good.
And when I came here, we sort of fell into the same cluster of great individuals. So there really was not anything lost. I think if you've got these values, they really transcend countries and continents.
Yep. Good. I was going to ask you, was there one great piece of advice you received during that journey, during that time growing up, whether it was in Nigeria, Europe, or here?
Actually, it's the same thing my mom always told me, which is what I tell young people. Be yourself. Your journey is your journey. In a world that constantly pushes you not to be yourself.
To not be yourself.
Be yourself.
Yeah, I love that.
Be true to yourself.
Be true to yourself.
Yeah.
We're excited to announce Ultimate Partner Live Executive Summit, October 22nd and 23rd in Las Colinas, Texas. We're bringing back the event that we hosted last year, but in a new facility with state-of-the-art capabilities and live streaming. This is your opportunity to engage with other technology leaders, to learn the what, why, and how to achieve your greatest results, partnering with Microsoft and other tech giants. Featuring leadership tracks, fireside chats, and workshops designed to help you achieve more. The doors are opening next week for early bird registration.
All right, we're going to shift gears now.
To business.
We could spend all day here, and I love this conversation. I love the personal journey and the conversation. So Microsoft has been on a tear. 18 months ago, we wouldn't be having a conversation about AI. And I think it was right around Thanksgiving of 2023.
Yeah.
That OpenAI took off like a rocket ship, right?
Yeah.
I think Microsoft was caught a little bit off guard too. Like a little bit like, okay, yeah, this is great. We made this investment, but nobody saw that rocket ship taking off. Certainly Google was flat-footed. They were like, oh yeah, we've been holding on to this technology. We haven't done anything with it yet. And Microsoft's been on a tear with Copilot. It's Copilot everything. Microsoft recently finished the Build event. Lots of big announcements around Copilot, about infusing AI basically in all the Microsoft tools and technology. And Wall Street has been very appreciative of that. And the Microsoft stock has had a really great bounce, I would say. this past year. Call it a bit of a renaissance, right? Would you agree?
Absolutely. Vince, listen, it's been amazing. And if I take a step back and just talk about AI, because it's wonderful technology. I don't want to take away from the technology that it is, but what is even more impactful to me, and I think somebody like Satya as well, the way he goes about, driving the strategy of AI, is the impact that it will have on humankind.
Yeah.
I always tell people that there's never been a better time, to be in our industry.
Yeah.
Right? If you think about the impact this will have on the medical field, researching and treating, accelerating the treatment of, illnesses like cancer. If you think about the impact it'll have on education, if you think about the impact it'll have on developing countries, the human development, if you think about just the advancements that it will drive in those countries, and also, most of these countries that are really potential rich, but have had issues with governance and compliance.
Yes.
Right. So massive impact. So for me, that's even more impressive than the technology itself. Then when you come down to the technology itself, Copilots has just been amazing. What we've done in terms of taking the large language model and coupling it or integrating it into your work content and context, right? So that it reasons how it reasons and just reduces the digital overload you have, making individuals more productive, enhancing productivity, elevating that human creativity, right? And just customizing the way we work. Just that's just been immense. And I think a lot of people got caught flat-footed.
Yes.
Even people like us who were leading the fray, because if you think about cloud transformation, that was IT driven.
That's right. That's right. It was lift and shift.
Yeah,
it was
so
taking your data center, moving it to the cloud.
Exactly.
Who cares,
So,
right?
So there was some sort of you could predict what would happen, and you could pace what would happen.
Yes.
In this case, this is actually driven, by people wanting those outcomes that's going to impact the way they work and the way they live. So that's why it's been so overwhelming in a good way.
Well, it's the promise. You talked about IoT a little bit earlier. And to me, this is the promise of the cloud, because, first it was having the central intelligence of bringing everything into the cloud. Then it was having IoT be the tentacles, right? The bringing all the information into the central intelligence, and then layering in like large language models and all the capabilities around AI to that data set.
Yeah.
And being able to act on it in real time. I mean, that's where we're going.
And the interesting part about it is we're right at the surface.
We're just at the beginning.
We're right at the surface. It's gonna get more pervasive. It's gonna get in a good way.
Yes.
Right. It's gonna get more powerful. In fact, that's why I tell the partners that are in my patch that it's not just about this wave that we're facing right now. It's about them getting ready for it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So just ensuring that you're building those practices. You've got the resources to support it. You're compensating those resources, accordingly. You've got the services that will convert, especially in the case of, Copilot, those licenses that you sell through adoption and consumption.
Yeah.
Very, very critical that we land that, and we're here to help them.
Well, let's talk about your world for a second. I'm going to break it up into two conversations, right? Because I look at the partners that you manage in your business.
Yeah.
We talked about the Bill Gates moment, right? I talked about what happened here in Boca Raton 43 years ago. Microsoft created a licensing model, and
43 years ago.
And that created a channel And some of the largest, I'll call them channel partners, are the companies that you manage, right? We can rattle off names like CDW and Insight and Crayon and some of our other great friends. And some of them have been guests here on the podcast as well. They're massive organizations. And that management of that process is, it's not for the faint of heart. Like these are massive organizations that you're infusing Microsoft across. What is happening with AI, and how is your business aligned and changed working with these partners now on AI, but also, this new world of hyperscaler co-selling and marketplaces? How are your partners thinking differently than maybe they were a year and a half ago?
Yeah. First and foremost, as you mentioned, these are large multi-billion-dollar companies.
A lot of them publicly traded. Right?
Publicly traded. So things will move fast.
Yeah.
What we typically do with these folks is when we define our priorities at the beginning of fiscal year, we sit down with them. Well, let me back up. We actually have conversations with them before they define, right?
Yep.
So we, define.
You have an ongoing dialogue, obviously.
Of course, we
with
define
them,
it with their input in consideration, right? So it's collaborative, and then they get to land it. And in some cases, they get to, staff up the resources to go execute against the strategies and priorities.
Yep.
And that then has to trickle down through the organizations. So my point is, it's like you mentioned, it's a large ship.
Yes.
We've seen some pretty positive, steps in terms of transformation. And I think with each of them that you'll speak to, they'll tell you that while we've seen some progress, we still have, a long way to go.
Yeah.
I think the advent of AI is pushing everybody.
Yes, it is.
Pushing everybody. Because there's discussions that we've had, year in, year out for the last, 4, 5, 6 years. I think everybody now realizes that if they're not manifested, you will get left behind.
Yeah.
Right. So again, I commend these partners because we've talked, conference, they've listened, they've talked to us, we've listened. We're implementing those strategies. They're creating budgets to hire resources in cases that need to be. And
where are they investing? Is it in AI? Is it across other roles? Where are you seeing the investments?
There's huge investment in AI.
Yep.
Security, data.
Yep.
Right? Because don't forget, that journey is customers have to get their data estate ready.
Yep.
Right? To then be able to leverage AI.
Yes.
And then
they have to layer in security to make sure that
the environment has to be secure. Right? Yep. So they're beginning to their credit. They now understand, the importance of that left to right investment.
I think we talked about this yesterday, but we talked about Microsoft's priorities not really changing as much as they've changed before in the past, right? Last year we're going to talk about SMC in a moment, but AI being at the forefront, marketplaces being important. But this year, layering in security. Security is foundational to partner success. And would you say that's a new area, or it's an area that's gotten increased importance and maybe scrutiny?
I think it's the second part, because it's not really a new area for us.
No, but it's getting more. It's getting more attention
it's
now.
become more critical.
Yes.
And our partners, we have to succeed when it comes to security, and we have to succeed with them. We think we have probably the most comprehensive, security framework, right? Solutions framework in the industry, because we start from the devices back to the end of the cloud.
Yes.
I mean, we just launched, our Copilot Plus devices. What was it, about 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Probably the most powerful devices, with the most powerful and the most secure.
Yep.
Right. And when you're
it's creating a resurgence for the PC market, in fact.
And see, you can't really divorce this discussion.
That's right.
Between the hardware and the cloud, and then everything happening in between.
And for maybe partners that don't know the ecosystem the way you and I do, is that these are large organizations that provide end to end. They'll sell devices, they'll sell cloud. They'll sell ISV solutions.
It's a one-stop
It's a
shop.
one-stop shop.
That we're
That's
giving.
right.
It's a one-stop, secure, and powerful
Yeah.
stop.
And thousands of sellers in these
Absolutely.
organizations, huge
Absolutely.
organizations. We had D. Berger on just recently. Like we talked about like how organizations like his are embracing the change, right? Not every organization is like that. What are you seeing from the majority though? Like or I'll put insight maybe towards the top ranks, but what are you seeing from the majority of the partners you manage?
We've got a mixed bag, right? We've got partners, some of them that are in that top tier, that forefront with insight. There's some in the middle, right? But
middle of the pack,
but are still trying because they understand the urgency.
Yes,
right.
We know some of those as well.
Yeah. And
what
what I will tell you though is that where we used to have a lot of partners in the lower tier at the bottom of the pack, we don't have a lot of them anymore.
That's a good thing,
right? There's been this push to get to the middle.
Yeah,
and
that's good. I remember we had those conversations.
Yes, we did. We're working very aggressively with them to get to the top of the pack. Yeah.
Nobody wants to be left behind.
Yeah, and the other concept that's really beginning to take hold and gain traction that we've talked about in the past, but it never really has, is that concept of P2P.
Yep.
Right? Because we talked about this. What was it? 3 years ago when we spoke?
It must have been 3 years ago.
Yeah, we talked about the fact that not everybody, has all the constituents to build a comprehensive solution.
That's right.
You have to pull in an ISV if needed. You have to pull in a hardware provider or an OEM, right? So what a lot of these folks are doing right now is they now have a very pronounced P2P strategy, where they either engage, with a partner who has a piece of what they're looking for to build a complete solution, or they engage and buy, or they're now talking about, building, from in-house up in the case of security. And
it's also changing. We could dive in on this whole conversation. We might lose a few people along the way here if we did that. But the cloud and the dominance of the cloud commitments is changing the dynamic for those organizations that would normally they would sell maybe ISV software independent of Microsoft.
Yes.
And then they'd sell Microsoft separately.
Yes.
And now it's infusing the two going together into the account, right? Because maybe this ISV is maybe committed to a Microsoft agreement. They have a SaaS solution now sitting on Azure. And they're trying to get that SaaS solution to the customer where it was maybe it was an on-prem solution before. Let's use backup and recovery. So they're having to change their internal models, right? The ISV is changing their model, their compensation. The reseller is now coming to market a little bit differently with them. But at the end of the day, it's driving Microsoft Azure, and it's driving Microsoft products, maybe Office, security, all these other solutions into that customer. So it's more complex.
Yeah. And I think more importantly, it's enabling the outcome they want to drive for their customers.
That's right.
I love the fact that we're where we are right now, from the MPO perspective. That's a mechanism that I want to make sure that our partners get really, familiar and conversant with, because it really gives the ISV the ability to scale along with the partner when fulfilling those needs on marketplace that, is becoming more and more prevalent as a medium to purchase.
Yep.
Right?
And for those that don't know, MPO is Microsoft multi-party offer, Microsoft's term for multiple organizations coming together in a marketplace solution. The other guys use a different term for it. I think it's CPPO.
CPPO,
But we get down to the Microsoft speak, and we get some people here that are like, what are they talking about?
We are thrilled to announce our partnership with InPartner Software, the world's leading provider of partner management technologies. Serving over 4 million partners globally, InPartner excels in delivering cutting-edge solutions for partner relationship management and partner marketing automation. Their robust platform offers essential tools like program compliance tracking, customizable partner journeys, and comprehensive business planning. These features empower partner teams to swiftly transition from program design to achieving maximum value. InPartner is dedicated to supporting partner ecosystems everywhere and continues to innovate with new modules like Analytics Studio, designed to help track and maximize the ROI of your partner program.
For more information, visit impartner.com. Let's use another Microsoft acronym for this next part of the conversation. You participated in a panel discussion at our amazing event with one of the leaders from the SMC business. And we've had Kevin Piesker here on stage. We've had Kevin Piesker in the room. We had Noman Akhtar was with you yesterday. SMC is Microsoft's small, medium corporate accounts business. People don't understand what that means. They think it's SMB, but it's the mid-market. And it's actually a pretty significant part of the Microsoft business. People don't recognize, there's a huge opportunity here. And I remember you and I having a conversation probably about a year ago that it was underdeveloped and needed to create some muscle. And I know you exercise and you understand about building muscle, but that we felt we needed to build some muscle here, right? And that's, I think, how your role has evolved since we last met on the podcast, is that now you have these channel sellers. So tell us more about that part of the role and why that's so important to our listeners and viewers watching today.
Yeah, we did a really interesting, good thing, last year at the beginning of fiscal year. We went from, if you recall, my role last year was owning one country, the US, but having all the channel partners.
You had telcos.
I had telcos, distributors.
You had
what we call scale partners. I had domain providers. I had them all. It was fun. It was fun. And then I also had accountability for all segments.
Yes.
Right. But there really wasn't a lot of focus.
That's right.
Right. What we did was we went to that singular segment, focus alignment. And we took a look at our channels and said, hey, which of these partner sets would provide us, working with them, the biggest bang when it came to focusing on certain segments. Because they're scale partners for me. And we took a look at opportunities within each of these segments. By far and wide, the largest opportunities that we had were in SMC, the small, medium corporate segment, by far. And it was just undertapped.
I'm not surprised, by the way. I've been calling this the acre of diamonds for about a year now.
That's such an apt term. But you understand, Microsoft very well. You know how well resourced the enterprise, business is.
There's everyone gravitates to the top, right? So now you have hundreds of partners going on to those 11,000 customers, basically.
Yeah.
And then they're ignoring this mid-market, which is huge.
Huge. And it keeps growing because you've got customers in the smaller tier, SMB, that eventually rise into SMC.
That's right.
Right. So it continues to grow.
Yeah. And people don't realize that. And some of the enterprise customers move down to the corporate space as well, because Microsoft focuses on a smaller patch
in some cases
of organizations. So the corporate account space gets bigger.
Yeah.
It gets bigger on both sides.
So we did something very deliberate. We carved that out. We assigned a partner portfolio to it. Now that doesn't mean, the way I like to explain it to partners is, with us, you major in SMC and you minor in other things, right? We encourage you to major and live in SMC. Doesn't mean that we're gonna dissuade you from doing anything else, but this is where the opportunity and the investments, we made some significant investments in resources, in incentives, right? Into
very
SMC, right? So that landscape looks very different. We've got, Norman, you were talking to yesterday, we've got his sellers, we've got my PDMs, we've got my channel sales managers, who facilitate that co-sell.
And just in the US market, there's 10,000 corporate accounts?
Roughly or more.
I think Noman used 5,000 for the East. And
so roughly, and across the Americas, even much more than
much
that.
bigger, because you have all of the Americas now. So that was the other thing that happened differently in Microsoft last year. Your role expanded from a geo perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
So we went LATAM and Canada.
Geo, and we went vertical, partner and segment, right? So to provide that focus.
Yeah. And it makes the most sense because, again, those are the partners that you manage scale into those mid-market organizations most effectively.
Yeah, and they've been very receptive to that shift in strategy because we're seeing,
Yep.
the fruits of focusing on those opportunities together.
Yep. So we got partners watching and listening to us today that are looking to maybe potentially engage with you and your team on the SMC side. What do they need to do? Like, how do they engage, and what do you do to help them foster the growth? What does your team do there?
So the first thing I like to say is if you're not engaged, email me. It's Oguo Atuanya, OATUANYA at Microsoft.com. Now, that we've got a very elaborate, partner management and development program. All right. So we've got a set of PDMs that manage.
Depending on where you are,
partners.
what type of partner you are, if you're an SI,
Exactly.
a GSI, an ISV, right? I mean,
Exactly.
your team's going to ultimately work with them to bring them into the customer potentially, or help them guide them into the journey.
Yes.
But they might be managed or unmanaged in one of those other.
But
depending on their type.
What's blanket and universal across the board is that at the beginning of the year, again, we define those priorities, right? Those priorities are defined along solution areas, modern work, Azure, biz apps, and then we've got solution plays underneath those solution areas that are very specifically aligned, right, to segments,
right,
and then what this team that I just talked about does is make sure that through partner business planning, our partners are engaged into those opportunities in a very defined way.
Yep.
Right. And then in addition to making sure you've got your AI strategy, there are three things that we're going to focus on this coming fiscal year. Is one, land copilot on every desk, every seat, drive Gen AI design wins, and absolutely proliferate Microsoft solutions, security solutions.
So what's the land Gen AI wins? What does that look like?
So it's
helping the customer to.
It's kind of broad, right?
Okay.
Because if you have a Gen AI solution that you've developed as a partner, right, you drive an opportunity win with it. Now, there's so many different things that we look at in terms of calibrating those wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things that spin the Azure data consumption in the back end, right? But it's just going out there, securing that win with a customer. We want our partners to drive all those as much as possible.
Yes.
Right. And then, of course, we talked about security. But
Probably
one of the most important things that we need to get done in terms of partner engagement with our field is co-sell. We talked about co-sell yesterday.
Yes, quite a bit, actually.
We did. Yeah, we spent a lot of time on that.
It's an important topic.
It's very, very important because we need the sellers from our partners and the sellers from our SMC organization to really get down to the tactical level in terms of where there's opportunities, what are we going to use to fill those opportunities, how to attract those opportunities, right? So that co-sell bit is very important. Partners have to get really comfortable with, partner center.
That's right.
Right. As a means of
and many of them are working with some of our coaches, right? We have these ultimate partner ambassadors that were up on stage yesterday. These are organizations that actually help coach these or help these partners along, because you can't do everything alone. You can't always rely on Microsoft to do it all for you or with you. So with some of the help that we have people that know how to do that really well.
Yeah. So how are you successful? Let's align on those imperatives. There's three imperatives that I talked about. Let's align on how we, drive what I call relationship co-sell, right? Those are the four really, important legs of the stool, I would say, when engaging successfully with us.
And so the fourth one being the co-sell.
Yeah.
Effective relational co-sell.
I call it relationship co-sell.
Relationship co-sell. What is the difference between relationship co-sell and any other co-sell? Co-sell by any other name?
I think, some people think that co-sell is that point in time engagement where you sit down and you look at the list.
Yes, right. Yeah, like let's compare spreadsheets.
And then off you go.
Yeah, but that's not,
relationship co-sell is actually, you start that pre-work beforehand.
That's right.
And beyond that meeting, you're still connected.
Yep.
Right? You heard Norma mention yesterday, if something goes wrong, pick up the phone and call your counterpart.
Yep.
Right?
And the relationship is all about building the trust, right? In fact, we had Cassandra Golston here recently talking about the fact that co-selling is a verb. It's something you do all the time.
Yes.
Right? It's not a one and done.
It's not a noun. It's a verb.
It's a verb.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we are actually even getting down to the level where we now want to make sure we map the names of our sellers.
Yes.
And partner sellers.
Yes.
And make sure that their contact information is exchanged and they're live with one another. Yep. It's gotten to that point.
So cool. What advice do you have for these partners watching or listening today to optimize success? Like if you talked about these 4 areas, but if you want to, like, within 30 seconds, if we're on an elevator, what would you say to them? What do they need to go do differently or better to optimize for success?
I would say, 1, understand who you are and be very definitive in terms of what you do. Yep. Right? While it's wonderful to say you can do everything, that doesn't always work, right? No. You're better off, taking those 2 or 3 things that you know how to do and do well and filling in, very specific gaps in terms of needs, that we all have when we're trying to get to that customer, requested outcome. The second thing I would say is be very, very intentional from a co-sell perspective, right? Make sure that we're connected. Make sure that we're having those follow-ons from a relationship point of view. The third thing that I will just mention is let's also stay aligned on the imperatives, right? Because we can't really succeed without the partner. And that I would like to think vice versa, right? So if we begin the fiscal year, step for step, aligned in the same direction, and understanding how to leverage the resources that we have, will be successful. The other thing that I think partners should think about is let's understand what you're doing from a GTM perspective. Yeah. Because we can evangelize, we can integrate, we can interlock, we can evangelize, right? And
understanding what makes you different and better and different and makes you stand out gives you that opportunity to then go evangelize on behalf of the partner.
So
as well.
it's a branding campaign, right? So within the Microsoft field, if somebody hears about a CDW or Insight or Soft Choice or Crayon, there's that 1 or 2 things.
That's right.
That perks. And they understand that they're strong at it and they pull them into opportunities.
I love that. So I want to pivot for a second. I want to ask a personal question. It's one of my favorite questions. And I want to ask, now that we're in the studio here in Boca, you are hosting a dinner party. And you can host this dinner party anywhere in the world. We could talk about all the fabulous places you've lived. And you can invite any 3 guests to this amazing dinner party from the present or the past to this dinner party. Maybe even in the future. Somebody once said a guest in the future. Whom would you invite and why, Oguo?
So I always say this. I would invite my mom from the past, right? I mean, the significant impact she had in my life. That's indelible. Yes. I have a soccer star that I loved growing up as a child. Socrates Oliveira. From Brazil.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. I know Pele. Back in the day. Pele, of course. Pele was famous.
But I love Socrates. I would invite Socrates, and I would probably invite my my college football coach, Dave Arslanian.
What's his name?
Dave Arslanian.
Dave Arslanian.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, where would you play again?
At Weber State University.
Nice.
So there's if we kept the list at 3, that would be it.
And obviously I get the impact of your mom. Tell me, was the soccer player were you just a huge fan?
I was just a huge fan growing up as a child.
And tell me about the impact of your football coach.
Coach Arslin, you know, he had a style about him. He was a real human being. He wasn't your typical coach. He was that coach that would tell you, hey, listen, use football to get what you want out of life, versus football using you. And he's that coach that would give you a pep talk and say, hey, listen, we're not really out there to hurt anybody, right? We're out there to achieve an outcome, right? So do what you need to do, but then make it personal. Yeah. I just loved his integrity as a human being. And I loved, just his authenticity. Made an impact on me.
I'm thinking about the mentoring that you do now, and wondering if you're taking some of that forward, paying it forward.
A lot of that comes in. He's a very powerful individual, came from a very, prominent, powerful family, but was very understated.
Nice.
So that really struck a chord and stayed with me.
So awesome. Oguo, I want to thank you. But before I do, we are like the halfway point of the year, the beginning of Microsoft's new fiscal year. One last thing for our partners on leaning in for this second half of the year. How do they need to be thinking differently going into the second half of the year, beginning of Microsoft's new fiscal year?
I think if I could just borrow Copilot as some sort of a microcosm to just land this, we spent the first 6 months or so landing it, testing things out, trialing, right?
Yep.
Now we're ready for scale, right? Now, when you sort of draw that parallel back to AI and, all the movement that AI is going to drive in the industry, that's really where we are right now.
Yeah.
We need to scale now. I think we're past, the trial, show and tell.
So it's time to lean in as a partner.
It's time to lean in. It's time to execute against all those strategies. It's time to scale. Because if you don't, you'll find yourself behind.
Yeah.
And if you find yourself behind in this AI race, it's going to be tough to catch up.
It's a fast race.
It's not like cloud transformation. No. We talked about it.
We had lots of years to get to cloud transformation. We don't have years here in the cycles.
If you want to stay relevant, I go back to those things I talked about, right? Develop a managed services practice and strategy if you don't have one yet, right? Second thing is hurry up and get that AI strategy in place. Third thing is security. Fourth is amplify that cross-sell.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what we're all about moving into FY25.
Yeah. Excellent. I want to thank you so much for coming down here to Boca Raton, making the trip for this event, and for being on the podcast here today in the studio. I can't thank you enough. And for our listeners and viewers, I want to thank you for joining. Thank you for supporting The Ultimate Guide to Partnering. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button at the top. You can also rate and review us on Apple, Spotify, and leave a comment in the notes section on either of those platforms. It helps us continuing to get great guests like Oguo to join us on Ultimate Guide to Partnering. Oguo, thank you so much for joining us today.
Vince, it's been wonderful. The event yesterday was absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Great job.
Much. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being part of it. And thank you for watching and listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Ultimate Guide to Partnering. Hopefully this episode and all the episodes we've recorded are helping you better align your partner strategy to achieve your greatest results. So I want to ask you something. Have you implemented everything you've been learning? And are you now achieving the growth and revenue objectives that you hope to achieve? If not, it's time to take action now. Join Ultimate Partner Experience. We're building the community I've always dreamed about. With UPX, you get access to exclusive industry insights, unparalleled networking opportunities, tons of educational resources, and support from a community that shares your goals. Join us now. Visit our website, theultimatepartner.com, and sign up today.